Welcome, all of you. I'm afraid I'm going to forget to mention this, so I'm going to do it first. And that is that I want to just, if you don't know about the kiosk that an Eagle Scout made for the Historical Society, and it's now on the second floor of the library. The next time you're at the library, or even make a special trip to the library, go up to the second floor, and it's pretty prominent. It's a kiosk with a touch screen, and it has 34 sites, I think, that are historic in Sudbury, and it tells you about them. And then you touch the screen again, and you get the next site, and so on and so forth through 34. You can watch as much or as little as you want to, but we're awfully, awfully proud of it. And Marty Fitzgerald, the Eagle Scout, did this. Marty Fitzgerald the fifth. So or the sixth, one of those two. Anyway, I just needed to mention that to you. So today we're having a very special program about Hattie Goodnow, and you'll find out a lot about her, that Ernie Beer has been preparing for about 3 years now, when a camera, vintage 1890s camera, appeared at the Society, plus some glass plates. And Ernie was telling me that it was like recreating a person's life based on the photographs that once we got a digital scanner, Chuck Zimmer was able to scan into actually the computer so that the images were good enough to be able to actually determine what they were. And you will explain how you proceeded. Good. So let me turn this over to Ernie Beer, who will tell you a lot about the equipment, as well as a lot about this mystery woman, Hattie Goodnow.
Thank you very much. I think it was Ruth who actually asked the important question. She asked, "Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Hello? Over. Getting better now? That's amazing. I can hear you. No. In any case, Hattie, she asked the question, why do you want to do Hattie? And I really thought a long time about it and didn't have a good answer until recently. And then I was reading a book and I found a quote that kind of solved the problem. This is what a lady called Jane Austen once said. "But history, real solemn history, I cannot be interested in. The quarrels of popes and kings with wars and pestilences in every page, the men all so good for nothing, and hardly any women at all." And for me, that may be the reason that I really enjoyed this lady here, Hattie Goodnow. Her name was really Harriet Josephine Goodnow, but they called her Hattie, and I was introduced to Hattie by a person who moved into the house where she lived, right around the corner here, 293 Concord Road. And his name was Lamont Griswold. And he moved into that house shortly after Hattie died in 1944. She was born in 1867 and died in 1944. And you can see her here. And what I would like to do is to, first of all, tell you that I thought a long time about another thing. What shall I call this little talk? And I thought of things like talking pictures. That didn't do it. Sudbury teacher with a wooden shoebox. That was not too exciting. The time machine, and that was possible. Through the looking glasses with the Stanley brothers. A tale of two Hatties, but the best one would be help. And I really think that that is what's behind all of this. If you do research, you know that it's the that is really important. Again and again and again, you search for things and you often find a portion of them. Well, here's Hattie, and this is the plan. The plan is that I will give you a little chronological rundown of her life as she told it to me in writing with the help of Marilyn Manzella, who is with the Independent Association of Framingham State Alumni. And she submitted, Hattie did, a little resume. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her chronologically, and then we're going to zigzag through her life based on some pictures that we have. Hattie was born Harriet Josephine Goodnow, and the J is very important because her sister-in-law is another person that we're going to see a picture of and has a very similar name. And she was born to two people, Sudbury folks. One was her father, John Goodnow, and not the John Goodnow who left all the money for the library in town. Another John Goodnow, just to add confusion to researchers' lifespan and all that. So that John Goodnow married Adeline Wheeler, who became a Goodnow, and they had 3 kids. Hattie was the middle child, born in 1867. Lillian was the younger sister. She married a fellow by the name of William Hunt, and then when he died, married another fellow named Fred Nichols. If any of these things ring bells with any of you, we're always, the help is the key word. So the older brother was Frank Goodnow, Frank W. Goodnow, and Frank was fairly well known, while Hattie was not very well known. Frank was well known because Frank Goodnow was a selectman in town for, I'd say about 20 years. So we have this family, a family living right around the corner here, and she takes a lot of pictures in this center of town. So we've got the family living here, and Hattie decides something that's kind of interesting. It's a time of change. Times are changing. She lives with her father, who is a farmer and an insurance man. And as such, son Frank becomes the same thing. Now, women were expected to probably do what Adeline did, marry a farmer. She decides she's not going to do that. The other possibility at that stage is you could go and work in a factory. And there were factories in Marlborough and Framingham, not so many here in Sudbury where farming was the big deal. So there she is, and she makes a big decision. She decides to go to Framingham, to a normal school, and we know that only teachers are normal and that children are not. That's, I imagine, why they called it a normal school. And she goes to really the first, I would say, the first authorized normal school in the state, and that started out in Lexington, Mass., moves to West Newton, and then ends up in Framingham as Framingham Normal School. At that time, a school for women to become teachers, to give them an opportunity to get into a profession other than marrying somebody or becoming a factory worker. So the first, I would say, director or principal of the normal school was a man by the name of Cyrus Peirce, spelled P-E-I-R-C-E, and that name will be important when we look at what she does later on in life. So in 1886 or so, she starts studying. Thanks to her resume, she tells us this. And in 1888, she receives a certificate that says, okay, you can go out and teach. And then she does. She goes to a very strange location called Sudbury and becomes a teacher in the Sudbury school system, actually in North Sudbury. So she goes on and teaches here. She got that first degree, first certificate in 88, and then she's here till about from 88 till 1891. And then she does some more studying, and she gets a second certificate, a more advanced studies. And then what she does is she goes on to another school system. Now, I don't know why. We know that the schools in Sudbury are pretty good. And we also know that what's been done recently is that people have pushed for a $9 minimum wage. You've all heard about that being pushed for. And I don't know why they're pushing for that now. She got $9 as a teacher in Sudbury, but it was for a week. Now, don't be so sarcastic here, you know. She's a new teacher. So she goes on, and she goes to a place called Weymouth, Massachusetts, and in Weymouth, she ends up being actually a principal. Maybe that's why she went there, at one school for about a year or so, the Tufts School. Not anything to do with the college, named after somebody named Tufts. And then she goes on to the Hunt School, and she's teaching young children. Then she's going to go on to another school and a different system. She goes to West Newton to teach in the Cyrus Pierce School. Now, whether that has anything to do with the fact that she knew about this very well-known person, Cyrus Pierce, who was a big advancer of education. And she will teach there from, I guess it was 1898, and then she will teach for about 24 years and then go on to another school, a junior high school, the Day Junior High School in Newtonville. And she will then continue her studies. She continues her studies during all of this time. She just doesn't teach and forget about education. She's going to become a social studies teacher. And she goes to the Museum of Fine Arts, where I suspect she got some ideas about art, pictures, and photography. She goes to Boston University. She goes to I think it was called the School of Sciences, which was might have been a part of Harvard University for people to get additional education. And then she goes to Radcliffe, and she ends up really being a critic teacher. She calls herself a critic teacher at the Harvard School of Education, or through the Harvard School of Education. Probably somebody who says, well, you're doing this nicely, you're not doing this quite as well. What else does she do? She's a member of organizations. She's a member of what Lee tells me was the predecessor of this organization, the Goodman Improvement Society, which was, I guess really interested in this neck of the woods, is the center here. She's also a member of the Women's Club, Sudbury Women's Club. She's a member of the Grange next door, where they had records about her doing various things. She gave what I'm doing, I guess, some lectures over at the Grange next door. And she was active in the church across the way here, the First Parish Unitarian Church, holding a few functions in the church. So she's, and when World War I comes, she does knitting for the troops, and when World War II comes, she does sewing for the Red Cross. And so she's really quite the active person. Now, this is, and as I said, well, about 1937, she returns to Sudbury and dies in 1944. Now, I'm going to try the high technology here and cause this to move, I suppose. Magic. Now, you probably wonder who this is. This is Hattie Goodnow. But this is Hattie L. Smith Goodnow. So when you're into research, you know that there's a great big plot in the world to drive you crazy. And this is the fact that there are two Hattie Goodnows, and that's why she always uses the J, the Josephine, the J, to differentiate it. She always signs her name that way. So this is her sister-in-law, the wife of her brother Frank. Let's see, did I push the wrong one? Yep. Okay, well, we know about Hattie through what she gave as her resume, and we also know through these things that appeared in the house at 293 when Mr. Lamont Griswold moved in there. He found a camera, and I believe that camera is up here as well, the real one. And here's a picture of this camera. He also found glass plate negatives. He also found, I think, a tripod. He also found some little notes. And these were turned over to this organization, Sudbury Historical Society. We are very fortunate to have had some people from FISNA, the Photographic Historical Society of New England, come over here. And if you're interested in really how this camera worked, we had three people, Ron Polito and Dick Welch and Whitey Morange came over, and there's a YouTube. I think if you just plug in Hattie Goodnow and YouTube, or maybe Sudbury Historical Society, you can follow that, thanks to Peggy Fredrickson, who did a nice job on it. Here is the camera. Oh, look at that. There are two viewers. You could use this to do vertical shots or horizontal shots. And in order to see through those viewers, you had to have a little insert here, a mirror type insert. There are actually two holes on the sides, and it would reflect through so you could see the lens is behind here. There is this little knob here which would move this three different stops depending on. One would be the slowest shutter opening, two a little bit faster, and three the fastest. There's a key in the back, or a little knob in the back to move. There's a bellows in here. If I can do this very high technology here, it's called making this advance. Yeah. When I first saw this, I figured, well, that's a shoebox, isn't it? Why did they make it out of wood? And then when Lee opened it for me, I saw it was something else, but I wasn't sure until I saw there's a bellows inside here. Here's the bellows, and this, by a little circular knob in the back, you can make this move backwards and forward to focus. And this was quite a revolution, actually. This was called a Blair Hawkeye camera, and people often call it a detective camera, not because Hattie became a detective, but because of the fact that it didn't look like a camera. It certainly didn't look like one to me, and I thought, well, maybe it's a box and the camera's inside. Well, it is, but you don't remove it. And you could slide these glass plate negatives in here, and they were dry glass plate negatives, and that meant a certain stability to these things. They would last a long time, and it's amazing how well the pictures came out. And you could keep other ones in here. According to the people at FISNA, she did probably did her own chemistry. And this was a time of change. Again, the change begins here with her deciding she's going to go to the normal school. That is a change that started out in 1839 when that type of school came into existence and women had more opportunities. The same thing is happening here with photography. She gets really involved in photography, and that gives her an opportunity. Things are changing. Let me just see. And we can see a little bit from the interior here. This is the lens that was behind that kind of little bigger circle in the front of the camera. And this is a Darlot lens that she had. The camera cost an immense $15. And the lens, I think you could pay anywhere from $20 to $35 for this French lens, the Darlot lens. And there were other ones that were purchasable. You could adjust with this little deal here. And then on here it says Paris, because it came from France, and it says BF and Company. The BF is for Benjamin French, the distributor, and the BF, the one thing we know about Benjamin French is he wasn't French. That was his name. Okay, it's just a little more confusion in life. We also had this is a contact, a little holder to make contact prints from the negatives. She also left us this little booklet here that tells us a little bit about it, and I won't go in too deeply here, but it says S, the spring used to set the shutter. You could set it at different speeds, depending on the lighting condition. Apparently the film was not too fast, actually, back, according to the FISNA people, I believe they said by the 1920s, it was ASA 32, which is not a very fast film. So a lot depended on light and how long you could keep that shutter open. Button to release the shutter, timing button, index for focusing, and where you saw the bellows, there was a setting from 6 feet to 100 feet and beyond. Finders for upright and horizontal pictures, so we do have that. Now, she's sending us, I think of this as a time machine, she's sending us messages from the past. That's why it's, for me, it's been interesting. You're bringing back somebody who's been dead for 69 years and trying to find out about her. Well, she told us a bit about this by the fact that she wrote her resume, and she writes on these boxes in which we find the glass plate negatives. As you can see, you probably can't see. Yeah, that's the problem. The problem is, number one, she's not writing for me, okay? She's writing for herself. And you may label pictures, or you may have albums at home with writing on the back, and yet you have difficulty because most people don't give you all the information. Her penmanship is, well, when I look at it, I think of myself and notes as a left-handed person, how I make notes and try to read them 2 seconds later and cannot. You can enhance these things, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. The company that makes these glass plate negatives is called the Stanley Dry Plate Company, and things were changing, as I said. They're changing in this way that originally a lot of these companies were local. The Blair company that made that camera was in Boston, I think on Tremont Street. The Stanley company, Dry Plate Negatives, you may know this company perhaps by that name, Stanley. And they made these dry plate things, I believe, in Newton or close by. And eventually, times are changing, and another company that was run by a fellow named George Eastman buys up a lot of these local photography type companies, and things are off to Rochester. So there are about 10 or 11 of these glass plates, and you can see them when you come up front a little later. Well, the Stanleys eventually sell out and probably make a few bucks when George Eastman buys them out. And they start another company in neighboring Watertown. And in Watertown, they decide they're going to make cars, which will be run by steam. And you may have heard of a company called the Stanley Steamer Company, another local company. It's the same two brothers. Now, as I said, things are changing. And I'm just going to read a couple of 2 or 3 things from some old magazines that you can find on the internet. When you're looking for things, there are a lot of things now you don't have to go to places to find out. You can find old editions of Anthony's photography magazine and the like. Here's one. Remember, she goes on to teach at 2 schools in Newton. At about this time, a little bit before she starts teaching in 1898 in Newton, there's something being formed called the Newton Camera Club. And this is what it says: the organization, which is composed of 150 of the most prominent local photographers, recently dedicated its new clubhouse on Brookside Ave, Newtonville. I don't know where that is in Newtonville, but Brookside Ave. The clubhouse is a modern wooden structure, but so built to provide ample facilities for enlargement, and is fitted with photographic apparatus for members' use. And that was in 1885. Well, kind of have a hunch that she wasn't taking pictures quite that early, but you can see that a lot of these clubs provided places to do your chemistry, and it also mentions that about 10 years later, the president of that organization is Freeland O. Stanley, one of these two twins, the Stanley brothers from Maine, who came down to Massachusetts to get in the dry plate business and then to get into the car business. He was the president of that Newton Camera Club. Also, in Pittsburgh, there's an example of what is happening at the world changing for women. Amateur Photography for Women, 1885. At the last meeting of the Pittsburgh Amateur Photographers Society, it was agreed that ladies were eligible for membership. Applications from the fair sex are now in order. So women were getting into the field professionally and as amateurs. She was doing it as an amateur, and she entered some contests with a magazine and did pretty well. Now, you saw this box number 3. Again, they had about 10 or 11 glass plate negatives, and you can enhance them with Photoshop and still have problems because you can't enhance her penmanship. This one I wrote down because I'd have to strain to read that, but even when it's enhanced, further east in Table Bay, and when I Googled Table Bay, I found, yes, there is a Table Bay, and it's in South Africa, but I had a hunch she didn't go there. Just another plot to drive one crazy. Sydney in a rocking chair, first exit to T Bay, which we assume is Table Bay. Rocks exposed, Table Bay, Eagle Tree. Sydney seated beside garden, Maud in bee suit, which we'll find out more about later on, and shore beyond Darlets. So you can see the problem is she's not writing for us, so she doesn't give complete sentences to tell us what this is. She doesn't give complete names. Penmanship is unique, and in time things get somewhat degraded, you might say. Well, this is where she lives. She lives around the corner here. You've got Grinnell Park, and then you've got a couple of houses, and then you've got this house, and this is where I first encountered, in some ways, Hattie, because we went over, Lee and I, to see, when the Schultz family was living here, to see what it looked like inside, to see if some of these interior shots are what they seem to be. This is another view. This is when the Schultzes were just selling the house. And this is Concord Road. Some of you may have come up this way. Here's First Parish, and here we are behind these trees next to the Grange. So you could see, for her, it was easy to go and take pictures of this neck of the woods. Now, she and her family are largely buried in one location, and that is Wadsworth Cemetery. And here it says Harriet J. Goodnow, 1867 to 1944, and J.F. Goodnow is a nephew, born 1901, died 1952. And I found that almost all of the Goodnows in her group were at that cemetery. Well, one was not. Now, I said she went on to teach in Newton. She went to Weymouth, she went to Newton. Now, I'm kind of zigzagging a bit here because, in a way, people also moved some of those glass plate negatives from the boxes that labeled it one way to another box. This is 30 Appleton Street in Waltham. If you're a teacher, you know that when you're finding a house and you're starting out, monetary things are quite important. And so she probably moved, she boarded with the help of the Waltham Public Library. I found address books where you could see she lived on Appleton Street, number 30, this one. She moved around, and she went and lived on Main Street. She lived on Crescent Street. And then I talked to Sheila Fitzpatrick over the Waltham Historical Society, and she said, yes, she could travel from Waltham, from boarding house in Waltham, and take a trolley. That the trolleys would go down Actually, if she lived on Crescent Street, she'd get right onto Moody Street, go to Lexington Street, get on to Washington Street, if you know where Washington Street is, parallel to the Pike. And then she was teaching at 88 Chestnut Street, which is in Newton, West Newton. So she could really take the trolley, and by the 1890s, electrification was getting there. Some of these early trolleys were horse-pulled. This was her goal. This is a picture she took of the Pierce, I got to pronounce it right, Peirce School, even though it looks like Pierce, it's pronounced Peirce. And he was, again, an early leader in education and getting women education as well. So she taught here for 24 years. And she made a record of it. And it's interesting to see almost all the pictures we have that she took were on these glass plate negatives. Even though at the time she was doing it, you could have a little added thing to put roll film, celluloid film, in the same camera. This type of camera, you would have had to have an addition added to it. This is another side of the Peirce School, a picture she took. And when I went over to take a look at it, it is still there. This is from a different street, another side, but it is still there, and it is housing for the elderly now. So even though she started teaching there in 1898, and it was opened, I think, in 1895, as I recall, when I was a mere youth. Now, within this collection of things that were given to the Historical Society by Mr. Griswold, there are some negatives that are celluloid, that are not glass plate, and this is one of them. The question in my mind is, and if anybody has ideas, when did she stop taking glass plate negatives, and if she did celluloid negatives, when? When did she start? This boy looks like it's from an early period. He's got the that kind of a tie there and shirt that's kind of goes back a ways, and he's at a wood shop. Is this in Newton? Is this in Weymouth? Is this possibly even in Sudbury? I don't know. But it's interesting that there are a few celluloid negatives as well. Now, she labels things on boxes, and some things are in the wrong boxes, and some things just don't exist. And she mentions that one of the pictures is of her classroom. One is, and she puts down P.S., Peirce School, excuse me. Is this her classroom? Is this Miss Everson's classroom? Or is this the school library at the Peirce School? There's some lamps here. I don't know much about gas lamps, if this could be a gas lamp or if this is by the time electricity is going. And it doesn't give us enough of room here to see whether this is a classroom or a library. She even leaves us lovely little notes. And this one is probably while she was teaching for those 24 years at the Peirce School, because this says West Newton. By the way, again, the Peirce School was the normal school was originally in Lexington, then was in West Newton as well. And it says, "My dear Miss Goodnow, please excuse Elizabeth for her absence of this week. She has been quite ill with a cold. Wishing you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year." And then, to me, this is, I guess, could be just a turn of phrase, or maybe she thinks Miss Goodnow wouldn't believe her because it says, "Believe me." Maybe she didn't think Miss Goodnow was going to believe that little Elizabeth was sick. Very sincerely, and then it has the name of that parent. Can anybody identify this building? Yes, somebody I heard a correct answer. That's 2 bonus points. This is what is now called the Flynn Building, and at one time was called the White School, probably named after somebody by that name. And as I understand, this school was started up around the turn of the century. And she took a picture of it. She did not, as far as I know, teach in this school when she was teaching in Sudbury. Remember, she was teaching in North Sudbury, whatever District 5 was back at that time. And what did the Sudbury teachers think of Hattie? In District number 5, this is from one of these annual books, kind of budget books put out by each town. In District number 5, Miss Hattie J. Goodnow has passed through the year on the even tenor of her way, doing her best as she always has and meeting with good success. We regard Miss Goodnow as one of our finest teachers, and the instances are rare in town where more devotion is shown to the interests entrusted to one's charge than is manifested in her case. So this is what the school committee thought of her. Why then, after 1891, well, she goes back and studies a bit, and then she goes on to Weymouth. But it could be, again, that massive pay of $9 a week. When I first saw this picture, I thought, wow, that's a nice home. But the flag kind of, well, could be. Somebody like to be patriotic. And there's a flag here. Oops, am I getting it? Flag, and then this balustrade over here, and this fancy stuff around. Looks like an early building, and it is. It's the Tufts School. There were kids. If you pan in, I can't do it on this machine, but the nice thing is when Chuck Zimmer scanned these on to to our computers, you can really pan in nicely. And there it is. It's the Tufts School where she taught in Weymouth. So we know that, and this is the other school where she taught in Weymouth. She took pictures of these early schools where she was teaching. And again, I wondered, well, what is this? This was got a flagpole as well, and it turns out that this is the Hunt School. There were Hunts in Weymouth as well as in Sudbury. So there were a lot of questions, but fortunately with the resume we found out this information, because you can now contact the historical societies if you're looking up stuff in different towns, and they, in this case, Debbie Sullivan over in Weymouth gave us a lot of good information. And this is a picture she took. There are mentions of 4th grade and Miss Cuddy's class, but we don't know exactly if this is any of those because of the labeling. It's kind of interesting. Remember, the film is not terribly fast. It's outdoors, but how in the world you can get that many kids to sit still so that if you look, there's not that much blur. There's another look at it, a little closer up, and you can see these happy children, not unlike the children of today, guffaw. But you can see also, Hattie is not only telling us about herself, she's telling us about a period of time in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. This is probably the late 1800s. You can see this gigot, or what do you call it, mutton leg style from that period of time. You can see that's going to be in many pictures, this look. You can see these ties that the kids are wearing. They're wearing kind of high-button boots. It gives you an idea of what things were like. I think it could be a little exaggerated. These hats seem a little overdone, but could be that there was a little show at that school, whatever school it is. But in any case, if you think that she's taking these things in about probably the 1890s or early 1900s, and they really come out very nicely with these glass plate negatives. Now, this is not a photo of her class, but you probably realize that children sometimes, even in exciting classes like hers, doze off. And this is a picture by Jessie Wilcox Smith. And she worked for Collier's magazine and for some other magazines and did a lot of covers. And you can see Hattie must have really been impressed by her, because she took a lot of pictures of the pictures that were covers of that magazine. She also did what teachers might do these days. She took a picture of a book. This one showing Isabella and Ferdinand and Columbus being viewed by them. I don't know if she was really welcomed at that particular moment. And there it is, and it probably showed that to the classroom. The interesting thing about this is that this is the Day Junior High School where she taught later on. And we have no photos of that school that she took. Was it because she started using different types of film, roll film, or was it that, could be many reasons. This is on, I think, 100 Walnut Street in Newtonville. This is a close-up. It looks a little blurry because it's not the way she took it. And I would have asked, what are you four boys doing out here? Why aren't you in school? But they're at a fountain in Weymouth. Thanks to Debbie Sullivan over there, we were able to identify this unique fountain. You can see the hand of one kid seems to be in the fountain, and the same types of hats, the same kind of shorts and long stockings, ties that are unique. This is called Garfield Square in Weymouth and no longer exists. This is another shot you can see a little bit closer, and this is the way it looked originally. Whoops, maybe. That was the shot she took, and you can see most of the pictures in the pictures she take have streets that are dirt. This is, I'm not too well acquainted with Weymouth, but this is Wessagusset Beach, for anybody who knows Weymouth. And this lady is identified as Miss Pond. And Miss Pond is wearing kind of the standard attire from this late 1890s look, the straw hat, again, these gigots, these sleeves, and a waistcoat, and I think that's called Great Hill behind her. So Miss Pond is very likely, although this is an assumption, a Weymouth teacher that she knows. And she appears in many pictures. She's in this one. This is a pier at that same, apparently this pier isn't here anymore. I think the Weymouth Yacht Club is here now. This is Miss Pond. She loved the hat. And this lady is smiling. It's hard to see this in this picture. She may be in another picture. Hattie must be a devout non-smiler because I never see her smiling. But this lady does smile, and this again is Wessagusset Beach in Weymouth. Here's Miss Pond again. The style, she shows us a little bit about the style in that period of time. You have a lot of these geometric shapes with pictures, but it's geometric wallpapers. And this, I don't know, this picture looks familiar, but I can't figure out where that is. If anybody knows anything about that. The calendar, there's a calendar here, but it's too difficult to read that calendar. We are going to find another calendar that really gave us some information. She has left another note to herself. Search American history. Hay scenes. She does a lot of hay scenes. She wins some prizes doing hay scenes. The hay scenes, remember, her father is in two businesses. He's a farmer and he's an insurance agent, as is her brother Frank W. Goodnow. They're both into farming and into insurance. So there are a lot of hay scenes. There are Sudbury scenes. There are some of those. The interesting one I'd like to know more about is two groups at Aunt Nellie's, somewhat crossed out. She doesn't have to tell herself who Aunt Nellie is because she knows it. And I'd like to know what the last name of Aunt Nellie is. My schoolroom, Pierce School, I think she misspells her own school. I think it's E-I, not, well, maybe that's dot is on the other one. To get a print of each, perhaps sometime. Now, there's Hattie again. Am I going to get it? Yep, there's Hattie. She wears glasses, but there are these pince-nez, which is a French word for these glasses that have no ear thingies, whatever you call these. This could be, and is very likely, Adeline Wheeler Goodnow, her mother. Her father dies in, I think it was 1894 or 5. And so she's always dressed as if she were the prime example of mourning. This, I believe, is Aunt Nellie, last name really not definitely known. And if this Nellie is Aunt Nellie Hunt from Sudbury, this could be, again, this is a wild guess, that this could be her husband, Asahel or Asa Hunt, who dies in 1908. This looks like it's still from the late 1890s. So remember, there's a lot of, when you read history, there's a lot of assumptions made, and some things are positively 100%, some are really complete guesses, and some are clued-in guesses. Here's another group scene. We'd love to know where this interior is. This is called the Blue Room. She identifies this room multiple times as the Blue Room. We see this, I don't know how well you can see these pictures, but this, I don't know, 1500s, 1600 picture of a man with a ruffled collar. This almost looks like a Japanese partition here. I don't know what that is. This is Lillian, Sister Lillian, who becomes Lillian Hunt eventually, and then Lillian Nichols. This is Hattie. She's always got these glasses, and I read that in the 1890s it was just it was fashionable for both men and women to have these glasses without ear thingies. Yeah, that's a technical term we use. This is Nellie, Aunt Nellie, last name unknown, and this is probably Adeline. And then there's a little character down here that, I don't know, we will see eventually. This is called a piazza by this family. But is this we went, Lee and I went into the house where they lived, 293, and the family there, the Schultzes, they didn't think this was possible to have been part of that house. This open air area here where they are, and there's a house next door. It's still hard to figure out, and there's a little screen in here. She also leaves us a letter from a person who has some local fame, and his name is Linus H. Shaw. Well, Linus H. Shaw was the minister at First Parish across the way. He was the first Unitarian minister over there. And he wrote a very meaningful sermon on blacks and the Civil War in 1864, and commented on the fugitive slave laws which were going around so that people from the South could come up north and drag escaped slaves and drag them back to the South. It says here, Adeline, that's Hattie's mother, accept this small book with best wishes for your spiritual welfare from your friend and pastor, Linus H. Shaw, and this is October 8th, 1848, excuse me. So mother was a member of the church, and at that time, in 1848, Linus Shaw was minister. Now this looks like a very lousy shot, if I may use that technical term. This is really from a video, and I show this only to show you that this is Brother Frank Wheeler Goodnow and his son, because Frank appears in many pictures, and his son, Frank Sidney Goodnow. There were actually two Frank Sidney Goodnows, this fella and his son. They like to repeat names for cause confusion for people like me. And this is John Farrell. We saw that John Goodnow died in 1952. And this is a man whose name is Shirley Smith, Shirley Farwell Smith. Frank marries into the Smith family, marries two Smiths. One dies, and the second one is Hattie Smith Goodnow. Here, this is a picture that Hattie took, a little close up. And this is Frank haying, does a lot of haying scenes. This could be Tom Ash, a fellow that lives, Frank had his farm, the Green Hill Farm, down there on King Philip Road at number 4. The Green Hill Farm was over there. And this is called Hayfield, and things were changing. This was a local photographic magazine called Photo Era Magazine, and in 1905 she won first prize for this hay scene here. And she, from records we can see that she continued dealing with this Photo Era magazine through 1917, and I don't know if there was anything beyond that. This is what it looks like today. This is the 4 King Philip Road. This is where Frank Goodnow had his farm. And his wife, the Smiths, lived on the other side. Gardner Smith had a farm on the other side, and that burned down. And I think that's when this fella, Shirley Smith, moved in with the Goodnows. This is another picture. I just show this. This is also from a video. And this is, again, the father is Frank W. Goodnow, and the son is Frank Sidney Goodnow, and they call him Sidney. And I'm going to call him Sidney because 2 Franks are too much for one meal. Okay. So here is probably about 4 years old. This is Sidney. This is Sidney a little later on. Notice the style again, the shorts, the long stockings, the boots, this type of shirt. Now, this is unlikely to be his sister. He does have a sister, and the sister's name is Florence, sometimes mistranscribed on the census as Horace. Florence is the name, and she was born in 1880, so she would be older than him. So that's not Florence. I'd like to know who that is, if anybody's got any ideas. And this is, it's interesting to see what people had in their homes in the 1890s. Maybe some of you are laughing because you do have one of those. I don't know. This is called, by her, is called the Odd Sioux, S-I-O-U-X, like the Indian. I don't know, to me it doesn't look like an odd Sioux. It looks odd, and it looks like he's saying to her, "Are you staring at me, ma'am?" I don't know. But it's she really does a good job of posing these shots, and whether she learned that at the museum school or she just came naturally, she does a lot of posed shots, and she often is not looking at the camera. She's looking, she might say, "This is my good side." Well, here's another shot. This is Lillian again. Nice shot of a rural scene. This lady, I'd love to know who this lady is, if anybody's got any ideas. Lillian marries into, husband is William Hunt, and whether this is somebody related to the Hunts, I don't know. She's got binoculars, look like they're birding out somewhere, I don't know. That's Lillian, though. That's the same lady. There are a lot of pictures I'm not going to show you. They're called snow scenes. I'm not going to show you. There are a bunch of snow scenes where it's mostly snow. There are flower scenes that are mostly flowers. There's something as cloud scenes, that are mostly clouds. So those, I think we can get meteorologists and botanists to tell us about. Here's a nicely posed shot. This is Sister Lillian by a wall and a fence. I don't know if this is on Frank's property or where this could be. John Goodnow's property, you know where Concord Road is here, extended behind that house at 293 all the way just about to Peakham Road. And so we don't know about that, but that looks too hilly to be there. Could be maybe at Frank's property near King Philip Road. It looks like the shepherdess looking for the lost sheep. I don't know. This is that fella Shirley at a younger age, and this, using the computer, we could see that there are 2 months on this calendar. One is the 1st of November. There's November and December, and the 1st of November is on a Friday, and the 1st of December is on a Sunday. And using the computer, there are programs that will, if you've got a rough idea of the date, of the year, you can figure it out. And this would have been 1895. So there are things you can do with your pictures and find out about. This is this is a complete defeat by me. This person is identified as Harry. We used to say Harry Lanou, last name unknown. And Harry has got a fez. He's a Shriner. And I went over to the Museum of our National Heritage in Lexington, and they've got a lot of stuff on the Masons and Shriners. But when you work on one name, and you're not even sure that name is a Sudbury name, it's tough. And so that was a complete defeat. This is somebody named Harry, and you can see he's well-dressed. He's got the tie, the high collar, and looks very elegant. This is a little close-up. He's got a bow tie in this shot. Here's this interesting furniture from this period of time, the lamp and this pencil holder, a black fella, sitting on a chair holding these pencils and this interesting lamp, and you can see the style of wallpaper in the background. So to me, it's just interesting as a layman to see how things have changed. Now, on one of the census reports, it said Harry Morse Hunt, and I thought, well, maybe that's Harry. But 1902 seems he would have been kind of too young in those pictures for, I don't know. And this is Nellie Rogers Morse, who became Nellie Hunt, married Asa Franklin Hunt, who died in 1908, and so just a guess that Nellie could be Nellie Hunt. Now you'd say, oh boy, isn't that a crummy shot? Boy, he's moving, the paper's moving. No, this is a wonderful shot because there's a focus over here. And the focus is on a newspaper, and if we stand on our heads, as we all like to do, we can see and read that this is a something. This is the Journal, and it says, President McKinley stands firm. Okay, there's a clue. We know when McKinley was president. Waiting for the report, could be a report on war. Said to favor no intervention and demand for reparation. War preparations, however, go steadily on. Stars and stripes float over the Amazonas. Well, we know that in 1898 you had the Spanish-American War. And we know that President McKinley was the president at that time, and by Googling Amazonas, we find that there was a cruiser by the name of Amazonas, that the Secretary of the Navy under McKinley purchased a ship, a Brazilian ship, it was stationed in England at that time, and purchased it. And so we know that had to be in the spring of 1898. And on this one down below, this newspaper, it does say something about Easter fashions in this number, and for women in this number. So that gives us, we're very lucky to have that clear picture of the newspaper. Now this is the one Goodnow who's across the street at the Mount Pleasant Cemetery, and this is Lillian Hunt Nichols. She's a Goodnow. She marries William Hunt, who dies in 1899, I believe it is, and then marries Fred Nichols, and then dies herself in 1944, and this is Lillian. And now, again, when I see Aunt Nellie and I see Hunts, I Sometimes you put 2 and 2 together and still end up with 7. So, this is a postcard, and it says LH. That is Lillian Hunt, and it says over here, copyright 1905. I think it was written in 1906. Just got your letter. So Lillian is writing to dear old Hattie and says, the North Atlantic Squadron came in about sunset last night. 7 warships were enjoying the site Thursday p.m. And if you Google the North Atlantic Squadron, you'll find that that was an active Navy unit and was often in the area of Rockport and the North Shore. And they kind of showed that those areas, those ports could be protected nicely. This is another one of those haying scenes. Here's the hay wagon, and this horse is, to me, interesting because he appears in so many pictures. This looks like Frank. Now the question is this at 4 King Philip Road? Is this at the property of Frank W.? Or is this Frank doing it for his father? This is hard to see, but this looks like a mansard roof, and it looks like things are lower here. Well, if this is behind 293 and Goodnow Park is over here, there is a mansard house there. And if you look at the back of that house, it is lower in the back. It's not all 2-story or 3-story. So those are questions. Again, I probably got more questions than answers. This lady, we just don't know. There's mentions of other women, Miss Iverson, Miss White, but we don't know who this is. We don't know where this is, but she's dressed in that style of the 1890s. She's got a string. Many of these women have this string going across. Is that for eyeglasses? Is that for a watch? Or is that some sort of ornamental? Some of you people might know. I'm not. Yeah? Now, there are several pictures of this lady, and that's another bit of women's liberation that's taking place. This person is identified on one box as Faith. And it says Faith driving. Not a car, but it says in parentheses, golf. Now, the question is, it's Faith Lanou, Faith last name unknown. Who is she? And where is she? There is in the background a barn with a belvedere. And there it is. There's the barn. And what happened to my, oh, there it is. And there's the belvedere. This is in the background. Now, I've seen some buildings like that, but in relation to this, I can't tell where this is. When I first saw this, I thought, gee, this girl's in a quite different style. But then we looked at some pictures and it showed that young people sometimes did dress in different style. I don't know. Is this Miss White, Miss Iverson? We don't know. Now, another thing that was breaking loose at this time was not just the ability to get an education at a normal school, not just joining photography clubs, but sports. Sports, golf, as you just saw, and biking were the big thing in the 1890s. And here you can see twins, they looked like twins, wearing the attire. I don't think I'd want to ride a bike with that kind of skirt, but eventually, at that period of time, bloomers came into driving, but apparently there were advertisements with people wearing this type of skirt, wearing the shirt waist and that type of hat. It was very popular at that period of time. Now, I have a little quote that I'll put together with this, and this is by another person, and this person's name is Susan B. Anthony. And in 1896, this lady, Susan B. Anthony, told the New York World reporter Nellie Bly, the one thing that the bicycle has done more to emancipate women than any one thing in the world, this is what Susan B. Anthony is saying, I rejoice every time I see a woman ride by on a wheel. And by the way, they call bicycles wheel. It gives her a feeling of self-reliance and independence the moment she takes her seat, and away she goes. The picture of untrammeled womanhood. So women, things are changing. And somehow we forget the different things that were changing. To me, this looks somewhat like the lady that was on that pier at Wessagusset Beach. And she smiles in several pictures, something that Hattie is rarely doing. What is this thin pipe going up like this? I don't know. Is this for electricity or something else? I don't know. Now, here was something that was quite unique. You saw that box number 3, and on box number 3, it talked about Table Bay, and it talked about Eagle Tree, and she mentions Eagle Camp. And there was a fellow by the name of George W. Perry, who was a Marlboro boy who married somebody by the name of Rice. And then he was a Universalist minister, and they moved up to Vermont. And Mr. Perry, according to the 1902 Vermont geology book that he wrote, he became a geologist, and he bought up 1,000 feet of shore off Grand Isle. I don't know if you know where Grand Isle is, Lake Champlain. And he started a camp in 1891, I think. And the camp was for boys, and then boys and girls, and then parents and teachers of the boys and girls, and then finally there was a camp just for teachers. And that is the question. Which year is this? They are teachers. This looks like she's a lefty. I noticed that immediately, and she's taking notes, and what the other one is holding up, I don't know. But this is Eagle Camp. Now, after finding Mr. Perry's book and geology and seeing some of the pictures there, and I looked on the internet, and I found that Eagle Camp was near South Hero on Grand Isle in Lake Champlain. And he talks about the stone there. He calls some of the stuff chasey, which is kind of a shale. And then I noticed this tree, and this is from maybe 2-3 years ago. Not that she took. And this is a picture she took. And it's from the opposite direction. But you'll notice that here's that tree, and it's got needles on it. And here's this chasey. And this is Table Bay. It's looking at it from the opposite direction. And these are the rocks that the geologist mentioned. In fact, I wonder if she went to the teacher's camp over there and met Mr. George Perry and said, what do you think? Anything good to take a picture of? Because some of these pictures, if you look at his 1902 Vermont geology, they look like they're from the same general area. There's that stone and a tree. We had on the box number 3, we had something about Maud in Bay's bee suit, and the B is for bathing suit. You don't know how many of you have seen anybody in a bathing suit like this, but she did in 1888, according to the records from Framingham State. A classmate was named Maud Gay, I think was her last name, and this could be Chippen Beach on the island. There's an older person here, teacher, and there's some kids back here. And this could be her classmate from Framingham Normal School. Here they are. Notice Hattie thoroughly refuses to smile. She must have read the contract. Now, number one, you should remember that women who taught were often not supposed to marry. Contractually, they were I don't know if they had to take an oath or what they had to do, but and she never married, so there are no children to tell us all about this. Here they are playing croquet. This could be, again, on Grand Isle at Eagle Camp. And it's funny, though, every time I looked originally for Table Bay, it was always in South Africa. And then in Mr. Perry's book, it mentions that this is rarely called Table Bay anymore. Now this seems like this is the Kruskal household, the house, what's this called? Great Bear Road that goes towards the refuge, Great Meadows, on the corner of Lincoln Road and, is that called Great Meadows? Bear Hill, yeah. I'm glad somebody knows this town. Weir Bear. Oh, okay. I'm glad you... See, we're getting answers already. This thing's all working out nicely. Now, notice that this road is all dirt, and most of these are dirt. Well, if you walk back this way, past the cemetery over here, you will see that there is a hearse house that used to be behind 293, where the Goodnows lived. This is probably not it, but she took a lot of pictures of what I would call sheds. But that was on the Goodnow property, that hearse house, not maybe this building.
No, it's not the hearse, it's brand new.
No, this is, yeah, but it's in the style of the one that was on that property, if I'm correct. This house I would love to know. If anybody's ever seen this house, if it's still standing, if it's gone, has anybody ever seen a picture of this? Because this appears multiple times and has the white horse that Frank is always haying with. There's a fancy carriage here and has a very elaborate fence. This is a fence similar to that one that she took a picture of. And it's got all of these little lathe curlicues in there and the top. I went over to Acton, checked out there. I asked in Concord, and I've never been able to see or find even a picture of a fence like this. That might be interesting to know. Same with this. I went to Concord, and they couldn't identify it, but I've seen fences like this, at least in Concord, with these kind of granite stone pillars and the pickets. And I've seen barns like this, but there are two roads, and it's on the corner. If anybody knows any of these questions, again, it's searching and researching, and we never get all the answers, but keep trying. Some people thought this was at the top of Church Street. I don't know. I don't see it that way, but could be. It is a horse on a weather vane, dirt road. It's on a hill. Here is the reception room, and this is the Odd Sioux. Somebody mentioned that you look like you would need one of these pillows to sit on this chair because of this certain designing. It looks beautiful. For especially 1890s, you see these hangings, these curtains like this. They're very common in the 1890s. The colored windows, and there's another Indian on one of these pillows here. So this is called the reception room by her. This is my favorite room. I really enjoy this picture because it's got so much in it. It's got a medal here. It's got these things that were common in the 1890s, portières, French word for these door hangings that they would put between one room and another. It's got something that I always think I should see somewhere out beyond Worcester on a roadside, a tiger on some sort of black velvet with next to a picture of Elvis on the same type of... And yet, if this is the 1890s, it's interesting to see that. And there are a lot of medicines here and this little thing. Also, this insert, which was very common to have a fireplace insert that's quite elaborate. So she's telling us, without telling us, what life was like. There's a doll on a wall. This is called the M.E. Church, the Methodist Episcopal Church, which is now, as you know, just beyond the Grange, where she was a member, is the Presbyterian Church, and you'll see that, again, dirt roads. And this is a church she went to, First Parish across the way, and you'll notice that this definitely has to be before 1929 when this building burned down, and this building we're in the 1930s, came into existence. And you'll notice that all those people who said all these town centers in New England were all white, every building was white, you can see that that building, which was built in, I think, 1944, as I recall from my youth, that this is a kind of a grayish look. And it's on the same side of the street as the First Parish. Now, this looks like First Parish has been hit by a water buffalo from above, but it's not. This is widened so you can see the streets out here, the dirt. And this, she calls these critters here bossies. I guess that was her term for them. And here's a meadow, and you can see how rural this town was. This is First Parish in the distance, and all you can see is the bossies, an orchard here, and First Parish across the way. Here's another bossy, and here are these fences, and in the background there is a house. You can see a little closer. I don't know, is this near King Philip Road, or where is this? This is a little closer view of the predecessor of the building we're in, the townhouse, the way it was, and was somewhat copied for this building, I guess. And if you go to First Parish these days, you will find this clock is still in the building. You will find that this leak on the roof is no longer there. And the words faith, hope, and love are now only in the hearts of the parishioners, not on the wall. So things have changed. And some of these lamps are, this lamp is not here, and these lamps, I don't know if those were gas lamps or electric. What about this? Anybody identify this? Yeah, this is across from the State House. This is Augustus St. Gaudens's work, and it's supposed to show the Robert Gould Shaw Regiment of Blacks going down Beacon Street at the time they did that. This is the Hall of Philosophy. She took pictures in Boston. She took pictures in Concord, and this one is in Concord. This boat to me is quite unique. Lee found out that people would use kind of these flat boats like this and they would be behind the blinds, the grass here, and they could go hunting from this type of things. And in the back of this original picture, you would see hay that they would gather the hay along the river. This, I have no idea. This could be in Concord. This could be in Sudbury. It's interesting that these low sheds and low buildings are in this picture. Oh, we're getting to the end here. If you're still awake, just checking. This is a bridge that she took early on, and I looked for bridges like this using the internet, and the closest I could find was actually Route 62 between Concord and West Concord. Today, it looks like Route 62, and it's got a metal thing across here, and you'd never even notice it looked like this. But if you get out of your car and go down by the Assabet River, you can see there is a similarity. These stones are similar. These stones are similar. The trouble is, hers are a little too long around the edges here. But sometimes we search for bridges. And as we come to the end of this presentation, ideas. You want to bring someone or something or some place back to the present. There are ways of finding out some things, and probably the best way is to call on people like you. This is a little monster, curio, there was a picture of Harry over here in a vase, and this little monster was there, and you get to find out about people who've been long gone. And that's all, folks. But so it would be nice if anybody has any exciting answers to the many questions that I've asked. It would be nice to either tell me or... Yeah.
Just a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute, please. You're being recorded.
Yes, I grew up with a cow, and its name was Bossy. So I don't know if that's the breed of cow or if that was just a name they gave to him.
And where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Wayland and Sudbury, but Bossy was in Wayland.
Questions and
Anybody get the answer for all the other questions?
answers? Answers? Questions?
How big was that camera that you had the photograph of?
It's right here. You can come up.
Oh, it's smaller than it looked in the picture.
Oh, there was even a smaller one than this. At a different time, that same Blair company from Tremont Street in Boston actually at one time sold one that was even smaller than this. But this is the camera. There's a bellows inside, but it's not to be taken out.
Now, you said that she was earning $9 a week as a teacher.
Yes, in Sudbury in 1891.
When my mother was teaching, she was earning that kind of money, but she also was kept. I mean, she had a place to stay. And food.
Well, the trick is, though, Hattie was living in Sudbury and was right in town here. So
The school
maybe
didn't have to support her.
So they didn't have to support her, but
Yeah.
but when she went to Weymouth and when she went to Newton, she lived in boarding houses with several other people. You can see the list of people on the census who was there with her. So that's what I like about her, that she was not Babe Ruth, she was not Henry Ford, she was just like me.
She was independent.
Yeah.
How many slides are there, and have you digitized all of them?
I think we've digitized just about all of them. Some of them were almost impossible to really see. Some of them are missing. We don't know what happened to them. There were about 250 in all. And we don't know, again, there were some film negatives, like roll film, maybe 4 or 5 of those, but we don't know when she stopped taking pictures like this.
Ernie, do you want to describe the things that are laid out there, please? Otherwise, and if you have any other questions, answers?
I was just wondering, when she got the house that she died in, at what point did she get that house? Did she own it while she was in Newton?
That house, first of all, I think was built in about 1843, if I recall correctly. And then Father John was living there, she was living there, and then she dies in, when does she take all I know is from the Waltham records that she moved out of Waltham, where she was teaching and traveling into Newton, in 1937. It said I forget how they phrased it, but it amounted to she left there to come here in 1937, and she dies 7 years later in 1944. So we don't know exactly. It turns out, though, according to the pictorial history, I think it was, no, maybe it was Macris, that she sold, or she left the house, I think, to a fellow Newton teacher. Francis Thumim was the name. And then the house, I don't know if she couldn't afford it or what, but it was then sold to the Griswolds. And the Griswolds lived there quite a long time.
Okay.
Doesn't look like it. It looks like I thought about that too. There's that one going towards Wayland, you mean? I don't think so. This looks like it's really a one-arched bridge. And there are some other bridges that have the similar build of it, with the similar stones and the like. But I don't think, I think this is, you can see both sides of the river. So.
You know, in Sudbury or in the 1850s where there were activities, when they allowed girls to go to school?
When they allowed girls to go to schools, I know that early on it wasn't thought to be a good idea. But I know that by the time they got to, when you talk about school, in this case, if you're talking about the normal school, like college, in 1839, that school was established in Lexington, and that was meant just for women. And I know that the same guy, Cyrus Pierce, helped out a lady named Mariah Mitchell, who was from Nantucket, and helped her to get a job, and she got a job as the first woman astronomer at Vassar College.
In grammar school, though.
The grammar school,
Girls allowed in 1850, what month did they go to school?
good question. That's why we have a whole bunch of people here. I know some of you are going to come up with this answer as I look continuously in a stupid fashion around, but I don't have a good answer. I will try to find that out, though. What's that? Who was the teacher?
Girls allowed in grammar school in 1850, what month did they go to school?
I don't know, but a lot of times school. What's that? You have an answer? I know that a lot of deals were arranged so that kids would work on the farm, so that when we're as to the seasons, a lot of times school had to be rearranged for people to help out at the farm. Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't have a good answer. Yeah.
The girls went to school way back, and like the Green Hall, the schools were built with two entrances.
Yes.
One for boys and one for girls.
Right. Absolutely.
That goes way back.
That was the Puritan ethic. The Puritan ethic was that they were going to do it like in biblical times, that you would go in, people would worship. In fact, I think still in parts of the Middle East, they keep them separate. And so you're absolutely right. That goes way, way back, that the Puritans tried to emulate the Bible.
At the Quaker Meeting House in Framingham, it was a schoolhouse.
Right.
It has two doors also, and it was
Yeah.
built in 1839.
Right.
So girls must have been going then.
Right. In fact, yeah, I know in Waltham, the public schools, you would have separate signs on the door in Waltham, and these buildings were built even later than that, girls and boys. But I think a lot of that goes back to the Puritan ethic of going back to churches were divided up sometimes. And I think if you see now some mosques separate. Any other comments, answers, questions? Oh, yes. I get very easily diverted. This is called a flashlight. This was in. Hello. In any case, there are. You want to see what these glass plate negatives look like, and as you can see, they. When I look at some of the pictures that from my family from the 50s and 60s, they have faded, but these make good prints thanks to the fact that Chuck Zimmer got them on the computer. So here are those. Here is her camera, and you can look at it closely. This is where she could make contact prints by taking one of these glass slides, and you know how you can make small pictures by contact. At first, I thought this was a plate holder to hold the plates in the camera, but this is not, according to the people at FISNA. This is, what do they call this light color? Ruby glass. Ruby glass, you know, if you ever worked in the dark room, some of you probably don't remember we had something called film in the old days. Now they don't believe in it. But you need a dark room, and this is a ruby light. It's so you can work in a dark room. This is from the Stanley Company, these guys who built the Stanley Steamer, and before that they had the Stanley Dry Glass Print Company. This is from Kramer's, another company. She had some pictures that came in from Kramer's, and they were in the Midwest, I think in St. Louis. And is there anything else? And thanks to Hal Cutler, we have an interesting... You've all been put on candid camera here if you didn't pay attention. And you can look at some of these pictures closer up if you would. And if anybody comes up with any answers to the rather bizarre questions I've been asking, love to hear them. Anything else? As they say, that's all, folks.